We have hockey this month, so let's start turning our attention to the biggest questions involving the 2025-26 Buffalo Sabres, and today we will start with their number one center that you might even forget's on the team, Josh Norris, coming up here in the Locked On Sabres podcast.
Your Locked On Sabres, your daily podcast on the Buffalo Sabres, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What is up, everybody, and welcome into this Tuesday edition. Almost said Monday. It's been a confusing week for that. Labor Day here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast. You could check us out on our YouTube channel where you can watch the show. And if you would like to get involved with the show, you got a comment, you got a question that you want to get across, and we're going to go through some of the biggest questions about the team in the next month. So if you've got one yourself, you can hit us up on our Locked On Sabres text club. If you are not already a texter, you could head over to the website joinsubtext.com/LockedOnSabres, and you could sign up for it there. Sneaky Joe DiBiase here on a Tuesday. Today's episode is presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. All right, we are into September. Hockey this month. Kinda. Preseason this month. We are 20 days away. So 3 weeks from yesterday is the Sabres' first preseason game. 20 days until they're at the Blue Jackets. 3 weeks from tonight, if you're listening here on Tuesday, September 2nd, the Sabres will have their first home preseason game against the Columbus Blue Jackets again, then 2 games with Detroit, then 2 games with Pittsburgh, and that is it. 6 preseason games, and we are on to the regular season. So, hockey later this month. By the way, getting into some Josh Norris today, but if you are heading to the arena later this month or next month, might notice some things that are a little bit different at KeyBank Center. Nothing drastic. They still haven't or have not planned to replace the seats in the arena, which has to happen. There are cracks in the concourse. There's a lot of things wrong with the arena. It's a 30-year-old building that hasn't had a major renovation, but they are going to be improving some of the concourse areas in the 100 level, specifically to concessions. So that'll be a nice little small improvement that they do. Also, we talked to Pete Gwelly, the COO of the Buffalo Sabres and the Buffalo Bills, on WGR this morning, and he talked about hearing some complaints from fans over the years about the sound in the building. That's nothing that I've never experienced myself. I've never really had a big problem with the audio in the arena, but I guess I'm not comparing it directly to other arenas, but I have heard that complaint. So even though I haven't experienced it, I've heard it, and I believe it. And they believe it enough, too, that they are going to be improving the audio systems and the way that, the volume bounces off the arena in certain places. They're going to be upgrading all of that. So it should sound a little bit better in the arena again this year. That's if there's any noise, natural noise, fan noise, we'll see. So those are a couple of things to look forward to at the arena this year. But again, we're still waiting on the major renovations, which are sorely needed, that are well beyond those two things. There'll be new security stuff too that'll make it a little more easier to get in the arena. So that's all coming up in 3 weeks. So stay tuned for that. So, was doing the math, and I'm looking at it's September 2nd, and we got till October 9th, which is a little over a month and a week until the Buffalo Sabres' first regular season game. And I'm counting up the amount of shows. I'm like, all right, it's about 12 to 15 shows that we have here. And we got 6 preseason games, and usually we'll do like 2 preseason games per show. So that'll be 3 shows at least. We got about a dozen shows left of off-season talk here as we get ready for the regular season. And went through and wrote down the 12 biggest burning questions surrounding the Buffalo Sabres that I want to tackle show by show here as we build up to the regular season. And of course, within that will be lineup projections for opening night and GM questions and, how guys look at training camp. And that'll, be ongoing and develop a little bit once training camp begins. If we get an Alex Tuck extension, of course, that'll change things as well. But I got 12 questions written down that I want to go question by question until we get to the start of the season when they play the New York Rangers. And today, I wanted to start and kick things off with Josh Norris, in part because if you've heard this discussion a couple of times on WGR in the last couple of weeks or months, Jeremy's doing this thing where like every once in a while, he's like, hey, just want to remind everybody out there that Josh Norris is on the team. Josh Norris, who is the Buffalo Sabres' highest paid forward at the moment. And at the moment, if you go to Daily Faceoff or you just pencil in your own lineup, he's your penciled in number one center for the beginning of the regular season, depending on how you do it. Maybe you have Kulik there, but I would have Norris penciled in as the number one center going into the regular season. So let's sit with Norris today and look back on the trade, but more so what's coming up. How important his role is, what we would take from him going forward, the injury history, the production, what type of player he is, because really 3 games was not much to get a look at when it came to Josh Norris. And there's some numbers and some context into who they played in those 3 games that I want to break down as well. But really what I want to start with Norris is what his role is going to be asked to be and what is a win in this one. What's a win for Sabre fans? What's a win for you? And if you would like to reach out and tell me what you would take right now, again, referencing the morning show today, we were talking about Norris and we compared him to Yuri Himalev because Yuri Himalev, if you look at like number 13, it's not really this long storied jersey number that Sabres players have had. The best player, honestly, is Yuri Himalev. Early 90s, Russian winger, only played a couple of seasons with the Sabres, but had 2 20-goal years to begin his Sabre career. He had 20 goals in his rookie year. He was an older rookie, and then 27 goals the year after. And I just kind of said out loud, like, would you take 47 goals from Josh Norris? And the room mostly said yes. Owen Parker, who does our video stream on the morning show, he chimed in and said, I would not take 47 goals. I want a lot more than 47 goals from a guy that's going to be asked to be your number one center. So I think that's a fair opinion, but let's really explore that. Like, what would you take from Josh Norris this year? And if you want to extend beyond that, go for it. To me, the number one center point is critical here. And it's not his fault what he's going to be asked to do, but he does play a position where the Buffalo Sabres are thin if Tage Thompson is going to be a winger. And at the moment, it appears that that is the case, that Tage Thompson is going to be playing on the wing. And what is it to ask Josh Norris to be a number one center? And I do think it's a lot. I think it's a lot on several fronts. On the number one front for this, and I don't think this is really breaking any news, the biggest question mark you'd have about plugging that guy into that role is, can he make it through a season? Can he play 19, 20 minutes a night and not break down physically? This is a player that has missed a lot of hockey games in the last, really his entire career. In 6 seasons, the most 5 seasons. The first season I'm not going to count because it's only 3 games. It's a rookie year. But in 5 seasons, he has never played more than 66 games. He played in 22-23 as few as 8 games. By year, 56, 66, 8, 50, 56 are the amount of games that Josh Norris has played. You're most likely... I do this in football. I think it's fair to do. I think with injured players that have proven to be injury prone, some guys are like that. Tua in the NFL is one of these guys. I think if you're the Miami Dolphins, you have to go into a season planning on him to miss 3 or 4 games because on average, that's what's going to happen. And maybe you get lucky and he doesn't. Like 2 years ago, the Dolphins had that, but most years you're going to have that. Same situation here with the Buffalo Sabres. you have to plan on, until he proves you otherwise, you got to plan on Josh Norris missing 20 to 30 games. Until he proves otherwise, you got to plan on that. And that's where I do like that Thompson is hopefully going to have the ability to kick over to center if he will do it for the team. And you have Kulik there, and that's really enough. I think if Norris were to get hurt, that you have Thompson that could kick over. But that's where I'm at. And can he stay healthy? You'd bet no right now. I think you'd be foolish to bet yes that he's going to stay healthy. I don't really know what reason you would have for that other than just being a hopeful, optimistic fan that is not being objective. Sure, I hope he stays healthy too, but I'm not betting on that. And if he doesn't stay healthy, that's a problem. It's a problem to have your number one center being fragile. Or fragile's not the right word, but that, injury prone going forward. There are other question marks, though, about Norris. It's not just the injuries. He has never been the caliber of a number one center, even in his best season, 2021-22. 35 goals, 20 assists, 55 points in 66 games. That is passable. That is absolutely passable as a number one center. Every other year other than that, you're talking about more of a middle six guy on your hockey team. Now, listen, there's going to be two different conversations happening here. There's going to be the comparing him to Dylan Cozens conversation, and there's going to be the is he a number one center conversation. Two very different things. Because in my opinion, I like the player more than Dylan Cozens. Injuries are a big risk here and a big difference, but as players, I like Norris more. Norris does not generate as many chances. Norris does not create as much. Not even close on that front. Playmaking. Norris is a bad puck carrier, and Dylan Cozens does it all the time. If you look at the two and you look at some of their shots generated, chances generated on the power play, at even strength, all of it, it's Cozens over Norris every single time. But then when you go to finishing and when you go to certain stats, I was reading, just like doing some prep for the show, and Corey S on Twitter at Shutdown Line, going back to the day of the trade, kind of broke it down that like Cozens is ahead in all of these expected areas. When you look at, or not just even expected, but look at how about defensive? Like this is a defensive stat, retrievals, and then botched retrievals. And Cozens has a really good number when it comes to retrievals, but botched retrievals, there's a ton of them. Whereas Norris, retrievals is a little bit below average, but botched retrievals, like there's not a lot of them. And I think the trend that I see statistically from these two is Cozens generates a lot and then he fumbles. He's like, I would say he's a really good running back that can't stop fumbling the football. And Norris, not going to fumble nearly as often, might not create as many explosive plays. Now I'm already getting into an area where I don't like this comparable, because the thing I like about Norris that I don't like about Cozens creates all these chances and then he doesn't bury them, or he fumbles a play and the puck's going back the other direction. And there are these low IQ plays every night with Dylan Cozens, almost every shift with Dylan Cozens. And Josh Norris is the opposite. He is a efficient scorer. He is an efficient offensive player. And some of that is, well, he doesn't generate as much, but part of that is he doesn't need as many touches with the puck to create and to score and to make offense for his team. And for that, I like Josh Norris more. He's also a better defensive player. And he's been a more accomplished power play player. Better shooter, better a lot. But you got differences here. But that's one part of it. The other part of it is he a number one center? And I think he could end up being a better player than Dylan Cozens and not be a number one center. Now, one big question about whether he could be a number one center is, can he play with Tage Thompson? Because you're going to want Tage Thompson on the top line. What about Alex Tuck? Well, let's look at those 3 games last year, really small sample size, and how I think they fit stylistically, Thompson, Norris, because I don't think it's a natural fit. That when we come back here, breaking down Josh Norris on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Today's episode of the Locked On Sabres podcast is presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. The NFL season is almost here, a couple days away, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use all across the app. I actually like a game that not many people like this weekend. I'm looking at the Giants. They are 6.5-point underdogs at the Washington Commanders. A lot of people are going to like Washington there. NFC Championship, star rookie quarterback. The Giants, kind of a laughingstock. But Giants are going to have one of the best defenses in football, and I think the Commanders maybe got a little lucky at times last year. I think they might regress just a bit as an overall team, and I think that game's going to be close. I still would pick the Commanders to win, but I think that game's going to be close, and everybody's going to want to be on Washington for that one. So maybe that's what you like. Maybe you like something else, maybe in the Chiefs-Chargers game, maybe in the Bills game. $5 bet, you win $300 in bonus bets to use across the app if your first bet wins. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app today. You visit FanDuel.com, get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Sneaky Joe DiBiase back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Josh Norris, you might forget he's on the team. He's wearing number 13, and he might take the opening faceoff for the Buffalo Sabres this season at home. So looking at Norris and looking at what his role is going to be, what line he is going to play on. Now, the problem that I have with Norris being your number one center, and I'm not going to get into the whole conversation of if they number their lines and whatnot. No, your number one center is the center that plays the most. You know, you can write it however you want on your starting lineup sheet or your PR sheet, but the number one center is the center that plays the most. That's my definition for it, and that's how I'll treat it throughout the entire season. Is he going to be that player? Right now, I think he is. I think if you're going to be that player, you got to play with Tage Thompson, because Tage Thompson's going to be the winger that I want playing the most minutes. So are those two a fit? They did play some together in those 3 games, and at times it looked pretty good. They generated a couple of goals between the two of them in only 3 games played. The numbers look fine when not great when Norris was out there in those 3 games. Shot attempts were 41-39 for the opponent. Shots were 22-17 for the opponent. This is all in 41 minutes, by the way. Goals were 4-3 for the opponent. Expected goals were 1.8 to 1.6 for the opponent. So 21-15 in scoring chances for the opponent. So again, they're behind in all of these areas, but it is pretty close to what is normal for Norris. Norris is usually a little bit behind in all those areas. Again, part of that goes to, though, what is he as a player? He is a player that ideally is going to score on his 4 chances more often than the opponent is going to score on their 5. And mostly that's been the case with Josh Norris in his career, and you can get away with that. The other thing about those games playing with Tage, they were playing very strong opponents. And again, in such a small sample size, that's why it's really almost pointless to do it, because in those 3 games, like, how much do I want to hammer those two as a combo for getting outplayed when they played Florida, Edmonton, and Detroit? Now, Detroit's no playoff team. Florida and Edmonton, though, the 2 teams in the Stanley Cup final, were 2/3 of the opponent that they played. So that's another reason why the context here is you almost want to ignore those 3 games. And I really would want to do that. In my opinion, these 2 players do not fit together, because I think what the best type of player that fits with Tage Thompson is a puck carrier, a guy that can carry the puck through the zone, and Tage can kind of settle into being a goal scorer, being a finisher, not being asked to generate a lot of the play and set other people up on his own. He could do that, but he is better as a finisher and a goal scorer. The problem for Tage is he doesn't really have a guy like that on the team. Tuck might be the closest, because even if it's not Josh Norris, Yuri Kulich is also I would call him a shoot-first centerman. I think Josh Norris is a shoot-first centerman. The Sabres are filled, even Thompson is this. Thompson when he plays center, Norris at center, Kulich at center. These are all centers that you would expect to have more goals than assists. In fact, Every one of them in their careers. Look at Norris, 91 goals, 67 assists in his NHL career. Let's look at Tage Thompson, 176 goals, 149 assists in his NHL career. And then obviously it's a very small sample for Kulich, but 15 goals, 9 assists. You have 3 centermen, one will play the wing, but 3 centermen that all have more goals than assists. And I don't want to play the when I grew up card what centers did, but when I grew up, centers were always going to have more assists than goals, and usually by a lot, right? And those are the best guys in the world. McDavid is that, and McKinnon is that, and everyone but Austin Matthews, maybe, of those elite guys. Maybe Draisaitl's also goals over assist, although even that one not necessarily. Like, they don't have the top playmaker. So Norris, right? Like, I guess if I'm not going to have that type of center with Tage anyway, I might as well just put the best shoot first center that I've got. And going into year 2, I mean, you probably start there with the veteran going with Josh Norris. But who's going to shoot the puck? Rebounds? Is that going to be how this gets rolling? I just wonder really how much Norris does for Tage. Because there are 2 jobs being the number 1 center. One, sure. If you're Josh Norris, one of your jobs is you got to score enough goals to warrant playing in a role like that. You got to score 25 to 30 goals. And I would take that. I mean, is that anything to say? I would take 25 goals a year on average would be a home run, I think, at this point with Josh Norris. I might even take 20 a season. I probably wouldn't. I would want better than that. But 25 a year I would take. That's only job 1. Job 2 should be, in theory, for your number 1 center, are you helping to get the most out of Tage Thompson? And that's my problem with Josh Norris. I don't see any part of his skill set that makes me think he's best for Tage. So I wonder if they start the year. Kulich ended the year with Tage. But again, if he doesn't get hurt, Norris probably plays the remainder of that season with Tage Thompson. So it'd be very interesting to see how they line up at training camp. I think the biggest thing, though, here about Norris, beyond everything we've talked about, that could make this a win of a trade, of an acquisition, of a contract, which I want to talk about in a second. It's a big contract. What could make it a win is if Josh Norris comes in and he solves the power play dilemma. Sabres have had a bad power play 2 years in a row. And I think the biggest reason has been they got one finisher. Out of 10 guys that would regularly see the ice on 2 power play units, one guy consistently will finish an open shot, and that's Thompson. Nobody else. Not Cozens playing on that wing, not Jack Quinn, not Peterka. Peterka never produced on the power play. Nobody. Norris. If you go back through their careers and you look at Norris versus Cozens. Norris in 236 games played. This was at the time of the trade, so I guess there's a little more here. But at the time of the trade, 236 games for Norris, 33 power play goals. For Cozens, 341 games, 12 power play goals. Again, you'll find numbers that'll tell you, well, wait a minute. Cozens, when he's out there on the power play, the team generates more chances and gets more shot attempts. Your expected goals is higher. But this is the problem with Dylan Cozens. Dylan Cozens can't finish on the level of a player that's worthy of being on the number 1 unit. And Josh Norris can. So, okay, he might get fewer chances when they're out there. Maybe the puck doesn't move as smoothly between the wings, between Thompson and Norris. Maybe Dahlin doesn't like how the flow goes sometimes. Maybe there's more turnovers. However that manifests itself, I think the power play is going to be better. Because in those opportunities where you have an open shot on the right side of the power play, Thompson's on your left, when the puck gets to the right and there's an open shot there, one-timer especially, Dylan Cozens was almost never scoring that goal. And I think Josh Norris is going to score that goal. So my biggest reason for optimism when it comes to Norris versus Cozens is please give me somebody to save the power play. Because I'll get to this on one of our later questions as we get close to the season. There are a few things that could get the Sabres to propel them into the playoffs. I think two things they are going to need this year, desperately need. You need the combo of good goaltending and a good power play. And my biggest reason for hope that the power play turns around is this guy. So I'm ready for some battles. I'm ready for some arguments, some debate in the middle of a season. I pray that Sabres Twitter is just battling day in and day out about how good Josh Norris is because he's getting run over at 5-on-5, but he's got 15 power play goals. Pray that happens, because if he's got the power play down, then I'm going to treat that as a W, because I think that's one of the only ways the Sabres get to the playoffs. So that's a big part of this with Norris as well, the man advantage. So we should definitely keep an eye on that. And I have every expectation. Maybe Kulik's their number one center to start the year. Maybe it's Norris and Tuch, which I do think is a better fit, by the way, for Norris specifically, if you care. I think it's better just, stylistically. Tuch can do more of the dirty work. Tuch's more of the retriever, forecheck. Well, I guess Norris is a good forechecker too, but whatever. Power play. Norris is going to be on that number one unit. Don't know if he'll be the number one center playing with Tage. He's going to be on the number one power play unit. Mark my words, that will happen. All right, when we come back, the last thing with Norris, and this is kind of gets into the what would just sign up for conversation. There is a date with Norris's contract at the end of this season. And if the Sabres want this to be a long-term relationship, they're going to have to see some results early. And I'll tell you why, coming up here on Locked On Sabres. Welcome back to the Locked On Sabres podcast. Hey, we got a listener survey right now. If you listen all the time and you've got a complaint maybe about something, or you wish we did one thing a little bit differently, we answer questions about our advertising. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey to get started. And there's something in for you. Maybe you complete a survey, enter for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Amazon gift cards. Again, it's lockedonpodcast.com/survey. You can also find the link in the show notes. Thanks for helping us out, and go win a gift card, and maybe you can use it on some merch before the start of the regular season. Let's get back to Josh Norris, number 13, and a kind of forgotten piece of the Sabres offseason. It kind of feels like he's an offseason move, even though he's technically not, because he was at the deadline, but 3 games was basically nothing. So Norris, contract with Josh Norris. So here's the deal. He is, as I mentioned earlier, the highest paid forward on the Buffalo Sabres. Kind of amazing to think about it. $7.95 million per year. He is under contract until 2030. So he's got 5 more years left, 5 more seasons on his deal. Starting on July 1st of 2026, Josh Norris has a 10-team no-trade list that kicks in. You've seen worse. Not a full no movement clause, not a 20-team list, a 10-team list, no trade clause. How this season goes could dictate how the conversation sounds. There is a world, especially if he's injured, if he misses 30-plus games this season, I believe the discussion is going to be heavily about, all right, how can we dump this guy? Because July 1st, 2026, he's going to have some say into where he can and can't go. And if you don't like how it's going and you don't want to be tied to an anchor of a contract for 4 more years at that point, that would be the time to get out. So I wonder how the Sabres think about this. Do they see it that way? Do they see this as a 1-year experiment? And if it goes well, we ride into the future with him on a 4-year deal, $7.95 million per year. If it goes poorly, he's hurt or doesn't mesh with Tage, maybe they miss the playoffs and everything's getting blown up. I don't know what the circumstances would be, but there would be full flexibility to get out of that deal right away. You might be trading him for pennies on the dollars, and that'll look like really bad asset management. And, that's the risk of acquiring a player like this that has so much downside. But I think if he were to score 10 goals and play 50 games this year, you're going to have a lot of folks wanting to dump him for, not much. A low-level prospect, a second-round pick, just whatever to get him off the books. And hopefully, I mean, with the Sabres, you never really confident in this, but hopefully use that money in something better. It's a big number, almost $8 million. And while the cap keeps going up and it's going to go up again next year, the Sabres are, they're not as far below the cap as they normally are. $5 million below the cap. $90 million on their books is the most they've had in a long time. I mean, it's the most ever because of the cap going up, but by percentage of the cap, it's the most in a long time. So you might want some extra room, flexibility. Maybe a new GM is going to want that flexibility next year, and that's a part of this too. If Kevin Adams is the general manager, you're more likely to have this relationship extend beyond this year. If Adams is fired and Jarmo Kekalainen comes in and says, as the GM, and says, yeah, I wasn't here when you traded for him, and I hated the year he just had, and I wasn't a big fan of the player in the first place, so I'm going to dump that, and I'm going to go use that $8 million elsewhere. Again, this is all likely to happen before July 1st of 2026. What does he have to do to eliminate that discussion completely? It to me is just, the bare minimum. The bare minimum, 60 games played, 20 plus goals, and a helping the power play. You do those three things, and I think he's safe. And that's not that hard to achieve. You would expect or hope that those three things are going to happen. I would, at least. I expect he'll score 20 goals. I guess the injury part is the one thing I don't expect. I'm between 50 and 60 is what's most likely. And then power play, I do expect that too. So if you could just get that third piece, just stay healthy a little bit, and I don't think we're really talking about this. And that's the hope. The hope is, here's one last thing on Norris here. Goes back to our original topic of can he be the number one center? I am not open to the possibility. I know he's only, what is he, 25, 26 years old, and he's not even played a ton of games in the league. I mean, he's been around, but because of the injuries, he's only played 239 games in the National Hockey League. I mean, compare that to Dylan Cozens, who's played 362. It's almost 100 more games for Cozens, more than a full season. I don't think Josh Norris is ever a true number one center. Ever. I don't think on a great team, he's ever your number one center. Can he be your number two center on a great team? Sure. They have a good number one center. Really good one. So that's not the question. It's, can he be a serviceable? Can they get by with him being the number one center? And that is even up for debate, and it's really what we just did here for the last 30 minutes. That to me is what would be a win. Him just giving you something at number one center. But the idea that he's going to have some season where at the end we go, he's your number one center for the next 5 years, I can't imagine that. That's 40 goals, right? That's what Tage has done. And, Tage going to the wing. I think what you're going to find me saying a lot this year is praying for Thompson to go back to center. I think you're going to find me saying that a lot this year, hoping that something kicks into Tage or Lindy or the organization, and there's a discussion that's had, whoever wants him to play wing, whether that's Tage himself, which I think is the case, and maybe the organization too, that there'll be a meeting some point in the fall or the winter, and they'll sit Tage down and say, hey man, we need you to play center. And he'll be good with that, and he'll just be a centerman, because I think this team on paper is its best, and I think everything feels better to me if Thompson's going to play center. And at the moment, looks like he won't be. So that's where I think we're going to have a lot of talks this fall. All right, if you got a thought on Norris, what's a win for you? 25 goals a year? Is that enough? Owen Parker earlier this morning at WGR is like, I need more than that. I need more than 47 goals over the next 2 years. Do you agree with him? You closer to the 20-goal mark? How about just being better than Cozens? Maybe that's a win for you in your books, because that would be winning the trade. That'll do for us today here in the Locked On Sabres podcast. Next up, 12 burning questions before the Buffalo Sabres season begins. Goaltending is definitely going to be number two. Number one center and goalie are the two positions I'm wondering the most about. So we'll get to goaltender next. Alex Lyon, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. We'll revisit what happened at goalie this offseason and what we should be looking at heading into training camp. That'll be next. If you are looking for more hockey talk, maybe on U.S. orientation camp, Some stupid comments from Bill Guerin again today that I saw about Lane Hudson, but that's what you're going to expect from him being the USGM. You can check out Locked On NHL for all that's going on in the world of hockey as we get closer and closer to the regular season. Locked On NHL, find it on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Talk to you tomorrow about goaltending here on the Locked On Sabres podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.